Sinn Féin are campaigning to make sure that whoever replaces EU Commissioner Phil Hogan is specifically a woman and not a man. Is there a single political party in the Dáil that doesn't believe in identity politics and open discrimination of this kind? This is Ben Scallon and you're watching Gripped Media. Now that EU Commissioner for Trade Phil Hogan has resigned over the Oireachtas golf scandal, there is a big question mark over who the Irish government should appoint to be his replacement. Several people are already being considered. However, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has called on the government to select one male and one female candidate for the job. She's also spoken about wanting more gender balance in the European Commission. Now, that should already raise some big questions. What does the gender of a candidate have to do with their competence as a trade commissioner? Surely if you were in Ursula von der Leyen's position, you'd simply say, pick the best candidates for the job and we'll go with whoever is best qualified. Why is their genitalia even a consideration? In fact, the EU Commission is already almost perfectly gender balanced. It currently has 14 men and 12 women. So it's not like there's some kind of crippling deficit of female voices in the organisation. The whole obsession with gender balance is very weird, although not as weird as one Irish political party's reaction to the situation. Sinn Féin immediately took to the Dáil to demand that both nominee positions were earmarked for females as opposed to just one. It turns out that Sinn Féin were fine with selecting certain genders for the job. The gender politics was no issue for them. Their only concern was that one of the spaces was earmarked for a man, and that's one too many in their book. Kathleen Funkian, Sinn Féin TD for Carlow Kilkenny, said in the Dáil, "It's a decision for government, but as a woman myself in politics, I have seen over the years we don't have enough women. I am always a fan of gender balance and of quotas, so certainly 2 female nominees is something that I would support." She later added, almost as an afterthought, "But you do have to have the right person for the job as well, and that's ultimately what we want to see with the Brexit coming up." Fair play, Kathleen. Now that's a politician with her priorities in order. Genitalia first, and then once you have the really important stuff out of the way, make sure the candidate is qualified or whatever. As long as there's not a Y chromosome in sight, the rest is pretty much semantics. In fact, I'd say Kathleen didn't go far enough. Why only include women when there are 1,000 other non-binary genders to choose from? We've already gone off the rails with liberal lunacy in this country, so why stop now? Carpe diem. All jokes aside, I think it's important for people to realize that when a politician says they support quotas based on gender or race or whatever, they are insulting the entire electorate, women included. Voters should take it as a personal insult when politicians talk like this. Why is that, you might ask? Well, they're effectively saying that the democratic will of the Irish people was wrong and needs to be forcibly changed by law. When Irish people go to the ballot box, we elect the people who we think will best represent our wishes and who is most competent. Most people aren't thinking about race or gender or anything like that. You can personally love or hate the outcome of an election, and it might skew one way or the other, but ultimately you have to accept it. That's what our entire civic structure is based on. The public is given an array of candidates and they pick the ones that they prefer. The people's choice is sovereign. It should also be noted that there are actually more women in Ireland than there are men. Clearly, the men and women of Ireland are not as gender-obsessed as Sinn Féin, or you wouldn't need to bring in quotas forcing people to vote based on gender. Normal people are not concerned about what's between a leader's legs and are more worried about what's between their ears. So to say we have too much of X in the Dáil or there are too few of Y in the Seanad and seeking to control the numbers of each is effectively like saying to the public, I know you voted for these candidates, but really you're too sexist or stupid to understand what you should have chosen. It's a slap in the face to the democratic process. But this is clearly a view that is widely held among the Sinn Féin top brass. It comes just weeks after Sinn Féin Senator Lynn Boylan made a big show of going after one of her fellow senators on the basis that he was a quote-unquote white man, and therefore his opinion was apparently invalid.
Senator Ward is right that if this goes to the courts, it more than likely would be thrown out or would never make it to the courts. Of course you can say that. You're a middle-class white man. So you view the law completely different.
The age of men is over.
Now, of course, we should not forget the rich irony that a representative of Sinn Féin, the party of feminism and even of anti-racism and Black Lives Matter, is happy to attack someone for their race and sex and dismiss their view out of hand because of their identity. It does beg the question, though, if that means most of Sinn Féin's leadership also share these opinions. After all, party leader Mary Lou McDonald is a white, privately educated politician from a privileged upbringing. Similarly, Sinn Féin housing spokesperson Owen O'Brien attended a fee-paying school. Incidentally, O'Brien just so happens to be Lynn Boylan's partner, so maybe the next time Sinn Féin goes to discuss a controversial issue, someone should remind them of their own privilege and say, "Biggie Cune." So if you're watching this and you're a man or a white person, or God forbid both, you now know how Sinn Féin feels about you. According to them, you should be less involved in politics and your voice doesn't mean as much because of the way that you were born. We probably should have known something was up with Sinn Féin and feminism when Mary Lou started accusing people of mansplaining.
Talk to you about corporation tax.
Okay, thank you. You're going to mansplain corporation tax.
Well, Pierce Doherty was...
Following Boylan's statement, Leo Varadkar, of all people, weighed in with an uncharacteristically anti-PC take. If you're a white, male, or even worse middle class, Sinn Féin doesn't want you. So much for an Ireland of equals. He went on, "Just to clarify the point I was trying to make here, I was highlighting the fact that Sinn Féin dismissed Barry's views because of his background. Nobody should have their views dismissed because of their race, gender, or social class. That's all." Now, you might be inclined to double take at this and wonder if you've accidentally stumbled into some kind of trans-dimensional time warp where everything is backward and topsy-turvy. Could Leo, the king of cringeworthy liberal identity politics, finally have come around and started judging everyone as individuals, regardless of their arbitrary traits? Well, don't get your hopes up. This is the same Leo Varadkar, after all, who recently suggested that there should be migrant quotas for government positions. Referring to ethnic diversity, he also argued that the civil service was, and I quote, "very white and that needs to change." Take a listen for yourself.
One thing I strongly agree with the Deputy on is the need to set a target to have a number of people from ethnic minorities in areas of the public service. We have a health service that's very diverse, although less so as you go up towards the senior positions, not so much in the Gardaí, not so much in the Defence Forces, not so much in the education sector, as the Deputy mentioned, not at all in the civil service, which is very white, including the Department of Equality, for example, and that actually needs to change.
Not only that, but his government has just announced that Leaving Cert grades will be artificially quote-unquote balanced based on gender and economic status. So in other words, regardless of how hard you work or how lazy you are, your grades will be altered based on your biological sex and or your parents' income level, neither of which you have any control over. In fact, in his very next tweet after criticizing Sinn Féin for judging people based on their background, Leo celebrated Joe Biden's VP pick, Kamala Harris, for being half Indian. In other words, judging her based on her ethnic background. So clearly, if Varadkar had a moment of lucidity, it didn't last long. It seems much more likely that the former Taoiseach saw an opportunity to cynically attack Sinn Féin for something that he too was guilty of, and he took it. This whole quotas idea that society has to be a perfect pizza pie of identities with a certain percentage of albino Sikhs and one-legged lesbians in wheelchairs and so on is utterly absurd. The only consideration in politics is who is most effective at defending the fundamental rights of our nation's citizens. Anything else is ideology-driven nonsense. Please like and share this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider signing up for a monthly donation via the link on screen to help us produce more content like this. Alternative media like Grip needs all the assistance it can get, and every donation goes a long way. As always, thanks for watching.